Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I am Imran with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the headlines first. In India, 3 people have been killed after police opened fire on Muslim protesting a blasphemous social media post in southern Karnataka state. Police have arrested more than 110 demonstrators and imposed a curfew in the area. They have also detained the accused, who is a relative of a Congress politician. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops have martyred another civilian during a search operation in the Pulwama district. The occupation troops have killed more than 200 Kashmiris since India stripped the region of its autonomy last year in August. Israel says its warplanes have targeted multiple locations on the Gaza Strip. The Defense Ministry said it struck Hamas posts in response to explosive balloons launched from Gaza. This is the third such attack in a week carried out by Israeli forces. In the United States, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has picked Senator Kamala Harris as his choice for vice president. She is the first Black and Asian woman to be chosen as a running mate. Biden will face President Donald Trump in elections on the 3rd of November. The US has recorded 1,143 deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, increasing the toll to over 164,000. In India, 834 more died, while 61,000 tested positive for the virus overnight. Pakistan has reported 17 deaths and 730 new cases, taking the tally of active infections to nearly 16,600. Globally, the number of deaths has exceeded 740,000, with over 2.2 million infections. And in football, Sevilla beat Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0 at the MSV Arena to reach the Europa League semi-finals. They will face Manchester United on Sunday. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. We start our news bulletin from India, where 3 people have been killed after police opened fire on Muslims protesting a blasphemous social media post in southern Karnataka state. Police have arrested more than 110 demonstrators and imposed a curfew in the area. They have also detained the accused, who is a relative of a Congress politician. Soon after the incident, Muslim clerics and politicians stepped in, asking people to refrain from violence. Srinivas Murthy, a member of the state legislative whose relative reportedly posted the insulting Muslims in India, have been increasingly at risk. Since the Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi was first elected in 2014. Last year, the Indian government enacted a controversial citizenship law, sparking violent protests across the country. Critics say the law discriminates against Muslims. Meanwhile, Indian troops have martyred another civilian in occupied Kashmir. The occupying forces killed the youth during a cordon and search operation in the Kamrazipura area of Pulwama district. The troops have sealed all entry and exit points of the area. Indian atrocities in the occupied territories have sharply increased despite the COVID-19 outbreak. The occupation troops have killed over 200 Kashmiris since India stripped the region of its autonomy last year in August and imposed a curfew. Moving on, Israel says its warplanes have targeted multiple locations in the Gaza Strip. No casualties have been reported so far. The Defense Ministry said it struck Hamas posts in response to explosive balloons launched from Gaza. This is the third such attack in a week carried out by the Israeli forces. Now, Iraq has cancelled the Turkish defense minister's visit to the country following the killing of 2 border guards and a soldier in a drone strike near the Iran border. Turkish Defense Minister Hulusi Akar was scheduled to visit Baghdad on Thursday, but his visit was cancelled in response to the attack. Earlier, Iraq's foreign ministry summoned the Turkish envoy to protest the attack. Turkey regularly carries out attacks against PKK militants who have bases in northern Iraq. Now moving to Lebanon, where anti-government protests have resumed following a vigil for the victims of last week's explosion in Beirut. This comes after Prime Minister Hassan Diab resigned over his government's alleged mishandling of the crisis. But the move failed to pacify the protesters. People in Beirut held a minute of silence for the more than 200 people killed in the blast. The commemoration took place at the exact time when 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate stored unsafely at the port detonated. The blast at the city's port left over 6,000 people wounded and around 300,000 homeless. Meanwhile, the United Nations has called on Lebanese authorities to rapidly form a new government following the resignation of Prime Minister Hassan Diab and his cabinet. In a statement, UN's Lebanon envoy Jan Kubis said the new government must be able to address Lebanon's urgent and many challenges. He added there are immediate humanitarian needs that need to be addressed and key reforms that need to be undertaken without any delay. In the United States, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has picked Senator Kamala Harris as his choice of vice president. Biden has said he was honored to name Harris as his number 2, describing her as a fearless fighter and one of the finest public servants. The former California Attorney General is the first black woman and Asian American appointed on a major presidential ticket in United States history. In a tweet, Harris said Biden has the ability to unify the country, but her nomination took President Donald Trump by surprise.
She was very, very nasty to one of the reasons that surprised me. She was probably nastier than even Pocahontas to Joe Biden. She was very disrespectful to Joe Biden. And it's hard to pick somebody that's that disrespectful. When she said things during the debates, during the Democrat primary debates, that were horrible about Sleepy Joe. And I would think that he wouldn't have picked.
Well, Harris, who ended her own White House bid and endorsed Biden in December last year, will be key to help drive the African-American vote. Biden and Trump will face off in the presidential elections on the 3rd of November. Now, the United States has recorded 1,143 deaths from COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, increasing the toll to over 164,000. Globally, the number of deaths has exceeded 740,000 with over 2.2 million infections. More details in this report.
While the world awaits WHO's approval of Russia's COVID-19 vaccine, thousands continue to die every day. Overwhelmed healthcare facilities and tumbling economy are exhausting the resources of Latin America to fight the pandemic. Brazil's Piranha Technology Institute has announced it is in talks with Russia for acquiring its newly registered vaccine. But US's top infectious disease expert Anthony Fauci sounded skeptical over the Russian claim.
Half a dozen or more vaccines. So if we wanted to take the chance of hurting a lot of people or giving them something that doesn't work, we could start doing this, next week if we wanted to. But that's not the way it works. So I hope, but I haven't heard any evidence to make me feel that's the case. I hope that the Russians have actually definitively proven that the vaccine is safe and effective.
New cases in Europe have prompted German authorities to issue a partial travel warning for Spain's Madrid and the Basque region. Over in Australia, the sudden spike in cases in Victoria State has dampened the hopes of the situation stabilizing anytime soon. While cluster infections in Melbourne have forced the authorities to impose a night curfew, New Zealand appears to have celebrated zero COVID status way too early as the virus returns to the island nation and it locks down Auckland.
We're down here to protect our common law rights, our rights of freedoms of movement, freedom of expression, freedom of contact with other people. You know, these rights have been protected for generations and we're just not willing to let them go. We're simply not going to comply with lockdown restrictions and we don't consent to the authoritarian response.
The UN's International Labour Organization has voiced serious concerns over career prospects for youth under the slowed down economies and vanishing jobs.
The novel coronavirus continues surging in India, where 834 people have died, while 61,000 tested positive for the virus in the last 24 hours. The Health Ministry says the death toll has crossed 46,000, while infections count is over 2.3 million. There are 644,000 active cases in the country, comprising over 27% of the total caseload. The Maharashtra state continues to be worst hit with over 535,000 confirmed cases. New Delhi's attempts to recoup a declining economy have waned as a massive surge has ruled out any immediate chance of economic survival. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 17 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, with the death toll crossing 6,100. The Health Ministry says 730 cases were reported overnight, pushing the tally to more than 285,000. The ministry said more than 263,000 people have recovered across the country. It said there are over 16,000 active cases in the country, among which 785 are in a critical condition. Sindh remains the worst hit province with over 124,000 infections, while Punjab has reported more than 94,000 cases. Business magnate Bill Gates has acknowledged Pakistan's efforts to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. He was speaking to Prime Minister Imran Khan over the phone. The two agreed to gear up efforts for the eradication of polio from the country. Khan also apprised Gates of the improved coronavirus situation in the country. Khan said his policy of smart lockdown has been effective in containing the pandemic while keeping the economy running. He acknowledged the Gates Foundation's continued support to Pakistan. Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Sohail Mahmood says Islamabad attaches high priority to its relationship with the United States. He said this while speaking to U.S. Under Secretary for Political Affairs Ambassador David Hale through a video link. He also highlighted India's illegal and unilateral actions in occupied Kashmir. The two sides also agreed to strengthen economic partnership and bilateral relations. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. The United Nations says 70 people have been killed and wounded during weekend clashes between South Sudan's army and armed civilians in Warab state. UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric said violence between the army and armed civilians ensued over disagreement over disarmament of civilians. The disarmament of civilians is part of the most recent peace agreement signed between South Sudanese President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar. South Sudan's military spokesman Lulk Ruhai Kuang said 55 security personnel and 26 civilians were among the dead. Large fumes of smoke are wafting through jungle trees as the Amazon is once again under threat from the forest fires. The Brazilian government data shows fires in the world's largest rainforest has surged in August. Brazilian Space Research Agency INPE recorded 5,860 fires in the Amazon in the first week of August. This is a 7% increase from the same period of last year. The trend suggests this month may be on par with a year ago, the worst August in 9 years. Environmental advocates blame right-wing President Jair Bolsonaro for emboldening illegal loggers, miners and land speculators to destroy the forest. Bolsonaro says more mining and farming are needed in the region to lift people out of poverty. Now, Google says it will start detecting earthquakes around the world using the accelerometer sensors in Android phones. In a statement, the company said it will begin warning residents of California about expected turbulence with the rollout of quake alerting technology. Google says California, Japan and Mexico already have warning systems that give people seconds to protect themselves before shaking reaches them. It said Indonesia and other countries with less cash for traditional sensors could catch up if the company's product proves effective. Seismology experts said turning smartphones into mini seismographs marked a huge advancement. Over 2.5 billion devices, including some tablets, run Google's Android operating system. Google's principal software engineer, March Strogaitis, said there are hundreds of millions of people that live near the earthquake fault zones. He said if people can get an early notice that an earthquake is coming towards them, they can protect themselves. According to Google, alerts would trigger for earthquakes of magnitudes 4.5 or greater. Meanwhile, the company said systems will not work in China, where Google's Play Services software is blocked. Now, India's largest crocodile park can run out of funds in 4 months if lockdowns to stem the spread of coronavirus continues in the southern city of Chennai. More about the park in this report.
The Madras Crocodile Bank Trust and Center of Herpetology in India's southern city of Chennai gets about 5 million visitors a year. The ticket sales account for 50% of the revenue. But since COVID-19 outbreak, no visitors have been allowed in the park.
Keeping the current scenario in mind, we are actually not expecting substantial income from ticket revenues. So we have actually started to raise funds to make sure that we are able to see through this entire year.
The park is the biggest crocodile sanctuary in India and one of Asia's largest, hosting over 2,000 crocodiles and alligators. Workers at the park say looking after the animals is not easy, especially with some staff under quarantine for the virus.
There are some colleagues here who are quarantining right now as well, and since the staff works on shifts, and it's been difficult because there's a lot of workload and we need our full staff to be present because we have a lot of animals here.
The park was founded by prominent herpetologist Romulus Whittaker in 1976 and has bred over 5,000 crocodiles since its inception. It is currently home to 14 of the 23 existing species of crocodiles, 3 of which are endangered.
Now, Jordanians are venting their anger at the coronavirus pandemic by hurling axes at targets in an Amman store. More in this report.
The Axe-raised rooms located in Amman provides Jordanians with creative outlets for their anger, including activities like destroying televisions and throwing plates at a wall. Axe throwing is their latest venture amid the COVID-19 pandemic.
There is a lot of interest, especially after the coronavirus, with people being stuck at home for a long time during the curfew. People wanted to engage in sports and entertainment activities such as this. We imposed many safety measures. No one can enter the area where the axes are thrown, and there is a safety gear for the face and the eyes.
Participants say this is one of their favorite new activities.
We're used to throwing darts at targets to get points, but the idea of throwing an axe at the same target is quite new. This is a great way to spend your surplus energy.
The government in March imposed a 2-month-long curfew aimed at curbing the spread of coronavirus. Jordan has so far reported more than 1,200 confirmed coronavirus cases and 11 deaths.
Now, London says unemployment in the UK fell by the largest amount in over a decade between April and June. The Office for National Statistics said employment decreased by 220,000 on the quarter. In a report, the UNS said such statistics were reported after the 2009 global financial crisis. Officials say the youngest and oldest workers, as well as people in manual occupations, have been hit by the COVID-19. The UK unemployment rate was estimated at 3.9%, largely unchanged on the year and the previous quarter, as millions remained on the government-backed furlough scheme. But this quarter saw a drastic decrease in employment rates as the country eased coronavirus restrictions. Asian markets are trading lower as investors monitor the coronavirus pandemic and its effect on global supply chains. Investors are eyeing the second US COVID-19 relief package due to be announced soon. The Shanghai Composite fell nearly 2%, while the Shenzhen Composite is down by over 2.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index dropped fractionally. In South Korea, the Kospi Index too dropped under the flat line. Australia's ASX 200 dropped nearly 0.5%. Now, in football, Sevilla beat Wolverhampton Wanderers by 1-0 at the MSV Arena to reach the Europa League semi-finals. Sevilla midfielder Lucas Ocampos headed in a late goal to snatch a victory for the five-time winners. Goalkeeper Bono saved a penalty from Wolves forward Raul Jimenez in the 13th minute as Julian Lopetegui's side took control. The Spaniards will now face Manchester United in the last four in Cologne on Sunday. In the other quarterfinals, Ukrainian champions Shakhtar Donetsk beat Swiss club FC Basel by 4-1 at the Veltins Arena. Brazilian quarter of the junior Moraes, Tyson, Alan Patrick and Dodo scored for the Ukrainians, while Ricky van Wolfswinkel grabbed a consolation for Basel. Aqsa Mushtaq, an English striker of Pakistani origin, has joined the Italian club Napoli. The club said Aqsa joined the Italian side from Lenoir-Rhine University in the United States. Born to a Pakistani couple in Bradford, Aqsa represented Bradford City Ladies in Women's Premier League North before moving to the US. The midfielder secured a sports-based scholarship at Lenoir-Rhine in 2016. She was included in the All-SAC first team in 2018 after scoring 5 goals and 4 assists during the season. The midfielder says she wants to become a role model for the next generation of Asian women who want to pursue professional sports. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.News. Take care.